All right, welcome and thank you for joining the SEEDS event today. I am Nafi Abdullah, your SEEDS program manager. I will provide technical support for today's event. If you run into any trouble, please use the chat feature to contact me directly. Please use a thumbs up emoji right now to let me know that you guys can hear and see me. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. So before we get started, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping notes. Today's event is being recorded. Please note that your microphone was muted by default when you logged in. However, you are encouraged to type comments and questions into the chat. All questions will be answered throughout the event and at the end of the event. Live captioning is enabled in Teams. You can click the More Actions button, which is the three dots at the top of the screen, then click on Language and Speech, select Show Live Captions, then select English and click on Confirm. Finally, your feedback is very important to me. So at the conclusion of today's event, a link to a brief survey will appear. I would really appreciate any feedback that you'll have for the SEEDS program so I can continue to improve and update the series. At this time, I'd like to introduce our speaker, Mr. Bill Brown, the Assistant Director of Training with Compensation Service, Veterans Benefit Administration. As you all know, he is not a stranger to HCS as he previously served right here as the Director of Learning and Development. Mr. Brown, we are honored that you're here with us today. The floor is yours.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining me today. I'm glad to see some friendly faces and names in the chat already. I saw Rich, raising his hand. He's rearing to go. He's probably got some comments or feedback for me already before I even get started, but that's all right. Okay, so as Nafi mentioned, my name is Bill Brown. I'm the Assistant Director for Training within Compensation Service. Been in VA, goodness, almost 17 years now. Started as a rating specialist out here in Denver, Colorado. Then was an assistant coach before becoming a chief within the training staff for compensation service. And I did that for about 4 years. Did a stint of a year in the district office in Continental. So I saw Ali Faraji, one of my good friends from there, has logged on. So welcome, Ali. Then I went to HCS, as Nafi mentioned, and was the director for the learning and development staff. So did a number of these SEEDS events, but usually I had the easy part. I wasn't delivering the training, but instead was in the background or in a supporting role or helping get the speakers together. So much easier than today, but that's all right. I enjoy doing these types of talks and things like that. But about 2 years ago, I came back home to compensation service, where again, I had spent about 4 years running the VIP training or challenge training, depending on when you might have gone through if you're a claims processor, and got to come back. And now am the assistant director for our training staff here. So enjoy the training realm, whether it be that technical training with comp service or some of these training opportunities where we're focused more on that kind of soft skill stuff or professional development. So appreciate the invite and opportunity. And I think if we're thinking about the power of persuasion and influence and things of that nature, Nafi certainly exercised those skills on me to kind of get me to come in and provide this training today. I don't know if that says anything about me or kind of our experience working together when we were on the same team, and perhaps I was influencing her along the way, hopefully more through the relationship type of thing and not just the authoritative persuasion or influence that we're going to discuss in a little bit. Okay, so if we can get going, Nafi, thank you. Okay, so here's really our agenda or roadmap for today, and we'll kind of start by thinking about or exploring what influence is, and then move to practicing how we can potentially apply it in some real world or real life scenarios or situations. For myself, kind of where it's appropriate, I will add in just some of my personal experiences and some things that I thought might lend themselves to a decent example or something that might kind of bring home one of the points that we're going to discuss. And so where appropriate, I'll kind of interject some of my personal experiences here as well. But what I want to encourage you all to do is that kind of throughout this session, keep in mind maybe a specific challenge that you're facing in the workplace that you can maybe, once we're done, and I know that there were some interactive documents and things to kind of track along the way today, kind of think about that scenario, and then it can kind of help you map through. And then when we're done, some of your homework will be, how you can directly apply what you've learned to that scenario. So again, if you can kind of think about, maybe a way that you would potentially want to leverage some of these skills with something that you've got going on, I think that can help you kind of frame some of the discussion and things that we're going over. So we'll engage in some interactive activities and help you reflect on kind of crafting your influence by building trust and credibility. You'll develop kind of that 30-day action plan. So that was really what I was mentioning before, with some of the documents and materials that you should have received as part of the sign-up process. And then we'll conclude the discussion going through some practical tools and metrics. And then again, some of those next steps that you can use to leverage these skills into that real world situation. And kind of as we proceed, we're going to go through these principles from Cialdini. And he's got 7 principles of influence. And so again, they're mapped out in the document that was provided to you. And kind of think about 1 or 2 of those 7 principles of influence that you really want to focus on. And I'll say, again, much of the material is from a book that was written by Dr. Robert Cialdini and a few other articles. And, I believe in transparency, and I'll say I have not read that book. However, when I was kind of preparing this presentation and going through the materials that were provided by Nafi and her team, I just, before I read anything, I jotted down a few things when I was thinking about kind of persuasion and influence and what were some principles or items that I wanted to ensure that I discussed as part of that process. Coming in blind, not looking at anything. And kind of to maybe my surprise or joy, potentially, maybe I've learned a thing or two through some of the leadership programs that are run by my friends in HCS now. But a number of the high points that I had kind of written out ahead of time are also some of these principles and things that are covered by Dr. Cialdini. So, maybe he's onto something, or I've picked up a few things along the way. Okay, so if we're thinking about our learning objectives, we really want to enhance your ability to lead and influence others without relying on the formal authority. Because again, this is kind of that position where you're trying to influence others, and it's not, because I said so, it's because you've developed relationships and you're working collaboratively. So we'll discuss, building your self-confidence to build that effective influence, and then that can help guide and take initiative in the workplace. We'll discuss some of the differences, again, between the power of influence and then the power of position. So that was kind of what I was mentioning earlier, where, again, it's not you're doing it because I said so, you're doing it because you want to do it. So again, kind of keep those objectives in mind and think about, as you're going through it, how you can use these principles, again, to increase your influence, boost your confidence, and then figure out kind of when it is best to rely on a position versus influence, because there are still some instances where that is appropriate. All right. So first up, why influence without authority matters. So if we think about, again, we don't want it to always be that it's just because I said so, because I'm the assistant director of training, you work on the training staff, so you've got to listen to what I have to say just because that's kind of what goes along with the territory. Instead, we want to think about how influence can matter just as much or perhaps more so. So some of the benefits of developing that influence is that it allows individuals to really drive change and foster collaboration. And you can achieve objectives without relying, again, solely on that formal authority. This can be really important when you're working in cross-functional teams or kind of different roles. You're working across business lines, again, where kind of that influence is going to be more important than direct authority, because it can lead to more innovation and then kind of agile decision-making. So if we kind of do dive a little deeper there, we can enhance collaboration because developing these influence skills will enable you to work effectively with colleagues who don't directly report to you or may be in a different department or a part of the organization. So I think about this specifically when it relates to the compensation service training staff. We have to work in a collaborative manner with our partners in both the Office of Field Operations and then Human Capital Services to effectively deliver a lot of our training programs. Uh, Top of mind comes our VIP training program. All three of us have a part in that process, and it's not anything where I can make specific demands of these different business lines or organizations because, again, they don't directly report to me. We have to work together in a collaborative way, and hopefully we can do that by building those relationships and being able to influence one another to kind of obtain what I want, but also understanding that there are different goals of the organization or of these business lines that I have to be cognizant of as well. Can't always, as much as I'd like it, can't always be Bill's way or the highway. We've got to work in that collaborative way to ensure that we're not only meeting my goals, but also what we want to do with OFO and HCS. Can also help drive organizational change. So oftentimes we've got to be able to adjust and work with people, again, from a lot of different business lines. And so this ability to influence can really help deliver buy-in with early adopters and address concerns. It can help you maintain momentum so that you're able to continuously move the project forward or whatever initiative you might be working on. And then those early adopters who you've helped to influence and kind of, get on your side and see what you're trying to accomplish. They can also help to sell your change and create kind of that organic support within the organization. And so that can be really key to driving that change and, doing something that may on its surface be somewhat uncomfortable for folks. But if you're able to get kind of, again, those early adopters, that can help you drive that change. Definitely helps with organizational agility as well. We don't want to rely on long approval chains. We want to have folks, speak up, coordinate quickly, move and work together. I talk to my staff a lot about trying to resolve things at the lowest level, trying to work together in a collaborative manner with their colleagues to address different problems, concerns, come up with kind of that best solution, and to really work together. And this is something that I'm working on currently that I think is a good example of this principle itself. So I'm going to mention this a few times today because it's top of mind and something that I'm working on currently. So I was asked to lead a project to shorten the 526 EZ form. This is something that was brought to us by the secretary in this past December. And there was really not a lot of time to create a large team or prolong concurrence process because the goal was to deliver a new shorter form in 100 days. And why that's challenging is for a whole host of reasons, but during FY24 and 25, there was a large IPT that was put together. Folks from all across compensation service, different business lines, they came together and they were working on kind of the same initiative to try to shorten the form. Well, oftentimes when you get, too many cooks in the kitchen, too many folks, have different, again, priorities and things that they want to try to accomplish, we ultimately didn't really get a product out of that IPT. So when instead we were kind of given this much shorter timeline, we pulled together really a small group of people, some experts from our policy staff and people who, worked in forums every day. And I was just kind of asked to work with them and really lead the effort for the secretary and for the executive director and comp service. And not being an expert there, it was really got those folks together and started asking different questions. How could we meet the request from the secretary while also still maintaining something that was going to be, not a detriment to the veteran's experience? So what we were able to do was, again, bring together a smaller group of experts, but then get feedback from the different business lines and do it in a short and targeted way. We wanted to have shorter timelines, smaller groups of people, but still get that buy-in and feedback and address those concerns. And so we're able to do that by kind of leveraging some of those relationships, calling in some favors and asking folks for, a much tighter timeline than maybe we would traditionally. And so I don't have an outcome on that one just yet, but we are actually briefing the VA Chief of Staff tomorrow. So hopefully there'll be a new form coming to, a location near you very soon. But the goal, I think, is to announce it here in the next few weeks or months. So, but something where, again, we needed to be really fast and agile, so we couldn't have just this huge group and big concurrence chain. We really needed to streamline that, and that was one way that we were able to do it. Was again to bring together some experts and then call in some of these favors to really move us ahead in a short amount of time. Okay, last thing on here is it develops leadership skills. So again, being able to influence without authority is definitely a core leadership competency. And as you are progressing in the organization, definitely a muscle that you want to try to build and practice as much as possible, because it's only going to help you as you continue to progress. You're going to have the ability to work with a lot of folks throughout your career. And if you've kind of maintained and built those relationships, it's going to make that process so much easier to, again, leverage that, call in those favors and utilize some of your influence to help the organization overall. All right. Okay. Next up, we're going to explore kind of what influence really is and then how it functions in practice. So we're going to have what we're referring to as a reflection moment. So what I want you all to do and would encourage you to do is to take a few minutes here for just kind of a little bit of personal reflection. We'll take 60 seconds or so and kind of consider these questions. So what is the biggest challenge that you face when trying to influence others at work? And then what are your personal strengths that you could leverage to enhance your influence in those different situations? So would encourage you, again, if you are comfortable, to add some of your specific situations into the chat. And again, what's that biggest challenge you're facing influencing others at work? And what are some personal strengths you can leverage to enhance your influence in different situations?
And I can share, Bill, while they're gathering their thoughts. When I think about the first question, what's the most significant challenge that I may face when attempting to influence others? Because I have an idea and I only want it to be my idea, sometimes it's hard to hear other people because my idea is like in my head. So when you want to add or try to change an idea that I may have been working on for some time, sometimes I may be resistant to that type of change or ideas that people might give to me. So I'm working on it.
All right. Well, since you came on camera, Nafi, I'm gonna ask you. We were talking about this right before. So I mentioned to you I have a new chief, and what did we talk about? What was maybe something that I probably need to have awareness of and to work on if I'm trying to influence others? Having worked for me, and you're not gonna hurt my feelings. It's okay.
You're direct. When you're direct, and I get it. Many of you all in the audience probably are familiar with the disc styles. I'm a high I and Bill is a high D. So sometimes the directness could come off, right, as you may think he's being mean, but he's essentially being passionate about driving whatever the task or outcome that he needs. So directness, Bill, I would say. When I worked for you, now that I don't work for you, I'm kind of free from that. So
yeah, you're free from my reign of terror. I know. So if we think about these situations, so it's both your personal strengths, but then also understanding kind of those influence styles or the DISC style. because what could be a strength, you also want to understand kind of the flip side, and what are some things that you may want to be aware of when you are trying to develop kind of that influence and working with others. So again, if I know that I can be direct, and I'm dealing with someone like Nafi, who's more of that I style. I am fortunately a DI, so that is my number two. So I understand that I've got to maybe address Nafi a little bit different than somebody else who might be a high D like me. I can just speak very straightforward, very direct with them. Whereas with Nafi, we've got a little bit of how you doing, what's going on, what'd you do this weekend, all those types of things. So it really, DISC can apply here as well. So if you have the opportunity to do that, you certainly want to leverage and use it. I know for us, when we had the team together before, we had our own personal communication profiles where, if you didn't know somebody so well on the staff, you could look up and see, Nafi's preferred communication is X, whereas Bill's is Y. And that can certainly be helpful, again, as you're kind of developing your style and how you interact with different folks. All right. Any of these you want to highlight here, Nafi?
Yeah, I was going to summarize for sure. A lot of folks in the chat feel that resistance, I saw that as like the main thing. I also saw a couple that were interesting about the different levels of folks that might be a part of that team and trying to relay that information to hit every single level with the topic. So yeah, a lot of fear, resistance. So pretty similar.
Yeah, and I think that's totally normal. If you're trying to do something that's really different or out there, resistance is going to be kind of like that default setting for a lot of people, right? So how do we potentially overcome that? And that's, again, where you can leverage some of the principles that we're going to talk about as you're kind of generating, what is the best manner or way to kind of try to leverage your influence and work with people. So Nafi, let's get to these 7 principles from Mr. Cialdini. Or Dr. Cialdini. Okay. So the 7 principles of influence are a set of psychological strategies, again, that were developed by Dr. Cialdini that explain how people can be persuaded and influenced. And so these can be applied, across the gamut. It's interesting sometimes you learn these things that are maybe applicable at work, and then I use them at home too. So that doesn't have to always be workplace settings. You can use some of these things on your kids, maybe your spouse, who knows. But okay, so we've got reciprocity, and we're going to go through each one of these in more detail over the coming slides. But reciprocity, commitment and consistency, social proofing, liking, authority, scarcity, and unity. And so one of the quotes that we liked from Dr. Cialdini was, these principles represent universal mental shortcuts that influence human behavior and really across culture. So these are things that have been studied regardless of where we are in the world, and they're kind of like those core principles that impact everyone. So we will, again, kind of go over in depth here, and I think we've got reciprocity up first. So the first one is reciprocity, again. So people naturally tend to return favors and feel compelled to repay kindness or other concessions. So if we think about if a store is offering free samples, that can encourage a customer to make a purchase. So if you go into Costco, you're walking around, you get all the free samples, you could probably get a meal out of it if you really wanted to. But oftentimes you try that and you're like, okay, well, this guy explained this whole thing to me, or, really enjoyed this protein shake or mini hot dog or whatever the heck it might be. And it's going to make you, maybe more likely to purchase that. For myself, I was thinking, there's a restaurant my wife and I like to go to. It offers free meals for kids on Wednesdays. So to us, great deal. We've got 2 kids, save a few bucks. But what's the benefit for the restaurant as well? And kind of what's that reciprocity here? Well, they get us into the restaurant on a day, Wednesday, middle of the week, that we would probably not normally go out to eat. And because, we're saving the money on the kids' meals, we're, maybe more likely to buy an appetizer, a dessert, maybe have a couple beverages as well. So at the end of the day, we probably are going to spend the same amount of money that we would have otherwise if we had to pay for the kids' meals. But we've now purchased kind of those higher margin items. So appetizers, beverages, desserts, things of that nature. But if we're thinking about maybe the workplace, this can really be, if you help a colleague with, one of their projects or something that they've got going on, even just like Monday, earlier this week, you get to the end of the week and you're working on something and you ask them to assist you, probably more likely that they're going to help you in that instance because, they're kind of repaying that favor. There's that reciprocity where I help you, you help me, helps us all kind of move along. But for each of these, we're going to also go over some pitfalls. So kind of a challenge that can happen with reciprocity is that we don't want to do it to create that debt, or that obligation, right? If we want to help people or ask for assistance or whatever, we want to do it in a genuine manner because we don't want it to be I'm only helping you so that then I can ask you for your help, down the line. And I'm going to help you with like this really small thing. And then I'm going to ask you for something really huge and, say specifically like, hey, I helped you with, whatever on Monday. That can really cause some resentment or awkwardness rather than kind of that genuine willingness to reciprocate and help one another. So just want to be cautious with that. I always encourage people to work together, but you don't want to be, making it so pronounced that you're only doing it to, then call in the favor later on. Nor do you want to be the person who's just always asking for favors and never kind of helping out on the back end. Don't want it to be just kind of a take relationship. Should, want to maintain that good give and take where you're both kind of helping each other and it's kind of that mutually beneficial type of thing. All right, next up is scarcity. And so people tend to value items or opportunities more highly when they believe they are limited or rare. That can often create kind of that sense of urgency that you want to act quickly, make a faster decision. So if we think about, we probably all see advertisements all the time. There's 10 spots remaining. It's probably going to make us act faster than, it's kind of a open-ended. Anybody can kind of join the thing. You want to make it that like exclusivity, that scarcity that makes it kind of perceived higher value, that there's less opportunity, and so you've got to act faster. But you again don't want to rely too heavily on kind of the scarcity tactic or exaggerate kind of those limitations. COVID with toilet paper, yes, 100%. Because that can really damage your credibility and hurt your authenticity. And so we've probably all heard the story of, the boy who cried wolf. You don't want to be the one who's saying, it's always, a limited opportunity, there's only so many slots to get into this program or, training or whatever it might be, because that can really undermine kind of that trust that you're trying to establish with folks. So would encourage anyone to kind of add to the chat if you've kind of seen these instances of scarcity where it can be kind of overused to a detriment, or if there's been instances where you have been convinced to act quickly because of that perceived scarcity, but only to feel disappointed later. So while you're kind of thinking about that and adding something to the chat, I know for myself, I feel like I get emails dang near every day about the best deal for the New York Times. Act now. It's only going to, be available until this Sunday, and it's $1 a week. But it seems like that deal is every week. So I don't know. That's one thing that kind of came to mind when I was like, they're trying to create that sense of urgency and scarcity that this deal is going to go away, except I feel like I've received the same offer for the last like 3 years.
So a lot of chatter in the chat. Any phone scam for sure.
Yeah.
iPhone, the
Okay.
latest iPhones
Gotta
coming
have it.
out.
Yeah.
Distractions at work with IM messages. A funny one from Amber says, Army vet, she said, hurry up and wait was always a jab at the way of life. Buying a car, 100%.
Yeah.
New household cleaning supplies. Omaha Steaks is always offering a special. I would be worried about that. I see that all the time.
Yeah.
And then social media, something selling out, of course. So yeah, pretty similar.
Okay. All right, so you can kind of see like how that could be like a downside, right? If you don't want to overuse the scarcity. Yeah. That the car is always on sale. The Omaha steaks are always on sale. You can always get this deal. You see it so many times, you know are just going to tune it out, right? Like it doesn't really do anything for you at some point. And it's likely to kind of lose the intended impact or effect that company or person or whomever was hoping to get from you. All right, let's do number 3. And Rich is just on fire with the gifts today. Okay. Okay, so number 3 is the principle of authority. And so we're going to talk about, again, the principle of influence versus the principle of kind of authority or power. But there is still in this influence principles, if we're thinking about how it can be, is that we do still tend to obey authority and look to people in positions of authority um, because they can be, seen as sources of guidance or legitimacy or expertise. And so, there can still be benefits of, reaching out and asking for, uh, input or direction from somebody who is more senior, who has maybe that greater experience or expertise. So, a few things that kind of go along with this principle specifically is we have the desire for social acceptance. So obeying authority can help kind of satisfy that need to conform and be accepted within societal norms. So following kind of workplace rules and listening to that position in authority can help you kind of fit in with your colleagues. And we were actually talking to my son last night, and he's just somebody who is a rule follower. If there's someone in a position of authority, or there's a rule, or like even going into a movie theater, I think we've all probably snuck in some candy or something at one point or another. He feels like so uncomfortable doing that. He wants to just follow the rules. He doesn't want to get caught. He thinks, you do any little thing, you're going to go to jail. So he definitely, I think, would be, following, those positions of authority. So I mentioned also for the positions of authority, you're going to trust in that expertise, because oftentimes we believe that folks in these positions are, hopefully there for a reason, and maybe possess some sort of special knowledge or power, which can help influence that willingness to comply. I would joke when I was first became an assistant coach. So I was an RBSR at the Denver regional office. And on Friday, I was an RBSR. And on Monday, I was an assistant coach. And there were folks that were just my teammate the prior Friday. And Monday, they're asking me like crazy questions. And I'm like, I didn't get any superpower over the weekend. I don't know anything more than I knew last Friday. I'm just, getting into my position. I'm still trying to learn left from right and how we operate in this leadership space. There's no like magic wand that we, wave over folks just because we've gotten to a new position. But I think over a period of time, and you've demonstrated your competence and expertise and things of that nature, then more likely that folks are going to come to you for that expertise. And so another kind of example here is that hopefully everyone, I'm going to say hopefully, you're more trusting of, a doctor's medical advice over that of your friends, or, Chat GPT, or gosh, what's that website everybody goes to? WebMD, hopefully, you're going to trust an actual doctor and not, the doomsday scenario where we've all got, cancer and, 3 months to live because, you can doom scroll if you get on WebMD. All right. Okay, keep going here. Oh, I did have a quick example, Nafi. You don't have to go back, but I'm just going to talk about thinking about the 526 project I mentioned earlier. So while I was, the assistant director that was brought in, and I was asked to lead that project, I was not the expert, right? So I didn't want to come in claiming some kind of extensive expertise about, claims or forms. I hadn't worked claims in a very long time, and I had never worked on forms. So I wasn't there really to be the SME and the expert in that process. What I was really asked to do was more so to come in, ask questions of our experts, and figure out how we could, again, meet the goals of the organization and um, still maintain any type of legal requirements. And again, as not the person who was the expert in that space, needed to really rely on the people who had been working in that, had been part of those IPTs before, and really just kind of, ask them for their opinions and then challenge some assumptions. I think that was something I'm able to do, coming from the outside, but not trying to leverage any type of authority or expertise in that manner. I'm really relying on, somebody who is technically my junior to give me the information. They're the expert. So really wanted to kind of get their knowledge. So if they had just been listening to me and only doing what I said, we would have failed. We would have brought something, a product towards the other business lines and then to Miss Devlin and the secretary, and it would have just, flopped on its face because I wouldn't know some of the pitfalls that we might have run into. Okay. Next up, we've got commitment and consistency. So once people commit to something, they also tend to act in ways that are consistent with that commitment. So once we've made a commitment to ourselves or to other folks, often we don't want to go back on that commitment, right? So, and how we can kind of influence or leverage that is if you have kind of small initial commitments, getting somebody in the door, if you will, then later individuals have the desire to act or appear consistent with those previous actions. And so if you've already kind of taken, that small step, and then if you kind of build upon that, because it's consistent with, again, that previous action. If we think about how people are from a psychological perspective, they're going to want to be in alignment with what they've already done. So if we start with something like a small request, so at work, you might say, hey, again, could you review this section of report I'm writing? If you then follow that up with something later on, more likely that they've already kind of helped you out. They've already got invested in the process. If you ask them for something that's maybe more significant, kind of as you're moving along, kind of increases the likelihood that they're going to be supportive and help you out in that instance. And if we think about also kind of along those lines, kind of curiosity and asking people for their personal opinions and thoughts and, to add their perspective, that can also be helpful, particularly if you've got somebody who is maybe shy in public, but brilliant in private. So I had that instance in the past as well, where, we'd be in team meetings and I'd have a staff member who, would never bring anything up in the group. And maybe the reputation of them was that they were kind of aloof and they weren't really providing a lot or bringing much to the table. But then when I have one-on-one conversations with them, they would have great ideas, really good stuff. And I had to, really pull that out and get them to actively discuss that in a group setting. And that really, I think, helped us overall because we were able to, have those conversations, get the better idea out into the group setting, and then get kind of feedback from the group. And that's really just going to help your program or product or whatever kind of move forward, because you're able to kind of get inputs from a lot of people. Because I certainly never have all the best ideas. Want to ensure that we're getting input from other people. Another way with commitment and consistency is getting things in writing. And so, easy to say things, more likely to follow through and follow up if we put something down in writing. I know for myself, my wife makes fun of me. I always have lists going on. I write down different things that I'm working on or that I want to do. I've always got, a few of them going on, but it's a way for me to A, remember, and then B, make sure that I am going to get it done, because I've written it down. Even if it takes, days or weeks, I kind of maintain it and know that I'm going to do it. And kind of an interesting statistic that was provided as part of this is that there were some health centers that saw, simply by having patients write down the details of their follow-up appointment, the number of missed appointments and examinations went down by about 20%. So again, if you're committing to it, you're writing it down, it increases kind of accountability and the likelihood that you're going to follow through. Okay, this should be like a pretty obvious one, right? We are more likely to say yes and to help out folks if we like them. So, if we like or trust or build rapport with folks and form kind of genuine connections, like my good friend Rachel Larson. It's her birthday, so tell her happy birthday, everybody. You can form kind of genuine connections and can significantly increase your influence. So, a few ways that you can do this, right? You want to build rapport through active listening by showing interest in others, listening carefully, engaging sincerely, asking about their interests, really paying attention and demonstrating that you care. So, you can find genuine common ground, whether that's common hobbies or backgrounds. Again, that can kind of foster trust and build that connection to kind of just, build that relationship and make it more likely that, they like you and enjoy you, and you've established kind of more than a surface level relationship. You can also collaborate towards mutual goals. So you're working together on different objectives, again, that benefit both parties. So if you're offering to help a colleague or help them with what they're working on, it's going to show your cooperation, your support, and it's going to help you kind of build that positive rapport. Okay, so it's funny, I didn't know that Rachel was going to join today, and I did know that it was her birthday. But I always, and Rachel can confirm since she's in the chat, that you've got to kind of, to build this principle specifically, is to network. We were both out here as chiefs in Denver for about 4 years together. And so we had many, many opportunities to kind of travel and go out and do all sorts of things. And I'm the type of person that is always out there chatting with folks, going to the restaurant, going to happy hours, meeting with folks. And Rachel would be much happier, I think, to go to the meeting or training or whatever and go back into her hotel room. And I would say, no, Rachel, you've got to come out. You've got to come, give me 2 hours, whatever it might be. But you got to network, and really try to build relationships and establish kind of that rapport and getting to know different people, and then connecting with those folks. So, there's those opportunities when we're in person, but then I encourage you to kind of find excuses to reach out and connect to folks. I don't mean to call you out, Rachel. I'm sorry, but you were commenting, so it was a relevant story. But find excuses to reach out and connect with folks. So again, didn't know Rachel was going to be here, but something that I've done for years, and learned this from our deputy chief financial officer when she was my boss a few years ago. She kept a list of folks' birthdays and just added it to her calendar. And it gives you an excuse to reach out to people who maybe you don't have opportunity to speak to on a regular basis, but at least once a year, you can send them a message, and maybe that spurs a discussion or a chat, and you can see how people are doing. So then if you do have opportunity to work together on something in the future, it's not, I haven't talked to you in 5 years, and now I'm coming to you, for the first time and asking you for something. So, encourage you to certainly do that, because the more that you can kind of get out there and build those genuine relationships, the more likely that, again, you'll be one of these folks that people like, that they're then going to help you when you need something from them. But on the flip side, so if we look at kind of the pitfalls, is again, you don't want it to be artificial. It's really only going to be effective if you are genuine in what you're doing. And people can usually tell if you are only doing something, to then gain something on the back end, or that, you're really not interested and you're just kind of going through the motions to try to, maybe get something out of folks in the future. Okay. Next up is social proofing. So this is, again, something that we've all seen, I'm sure, in different advertisements. If we're going online and checking something out on Yelp or Google or whatever, go to a website, they're going to highlight, look at our 500 5-star reviews or whatever, because we want to see that others have done something or are doing something, because it's going to make it easier for us to then buy in as well, or to want to do the thing. I know for myself, we just got our house painted, and before we, found the company that we wanted to work with, first thing we did, went and looked at their reviews. What are people saying about this company before we, give them thousands of dollars and have them come paint our house. Wanted to ensure that, there were good testimonials saying, X, Y, and Z about this company. So you're going to see that a lot. And that's one of these things that can be used, again, to influence our buy decision. We wouldn't have gone with the company that we chose had we read all these reviews and they were terrible, or, there were a number of problems that were highlighted. Instead, what we found was a bunch of people in our neighborhood specifically that had used this company. And Mary, yep, she's my neighbor, had used this particular company before and had really great results. So we are certainly pleased with what we got. And this was just last week, so I have a freshly painted house, but kind of a quick example here. But on, again, the pitfall side is we don't want to rely or use kind of out of context social proofing, because that can, on the flip side, kind of damage credibility. So you'll see sometimes, maybe it's like, kind of an up and coming company, or, fly by night operation, and they'll kind of allude to maybe a celebrity endorsement that doesn't really, not really true. And so that can be kind of insincere or manipulative. And if we think about kind of some workplace situations that can be problematic, I've heard on a number of occasions, Bill liked this or wanted it this way or what have you. And then like somebody tells me this and I said, well, that's news to me. I didn't know that. So, you want to be cautious and careful that you're not over relying on an endorsement if it's not truly an endorsement and it's not really what that person said. Because if you're kind of using that to sell whatever you're doing, you want to be sure that they are, in fact, saying what you want. Okay. Kind of relatedly, the next principle is unity. And so this kind of influence increases when people feel like it's kind of a part of a group, that community sensation. So building a shared we, a collective identity that brings people together. So we see this kind of increasing when people find kind of a common team or mission. They are more likely to engage in an activity, offer ideas, or put in different effort. And conversely, if you don't kind of have that built, people can feel excluded or disconnected and then disengaged. So we think about using even just more inclusive language like we or our team or our mission to foster that kind of sense of purpose. So if I think about, my team specifically, we've got, 86 people. We are all over the country. So we start every one of our all hands meetings with our staff mission, our vision, and then our motto. And again, because we are all over the country, we are one team geographically dispersed. And we also discuss about it doesn't necessarily matter what part of the training staff or training program we're responsible for. We are all part of the collective we when it comes to training. We are responsible for the training programs that support the claims processors for VBA. So try to, again, create that unity in that collective we and that spirit to, again, hopefully drive some teamwork and collaboration. Okay, so we had talked about before, there's going to be opportunity for some collaborative exercises and different things that you can hopefully put into practice some of the things that we've talked about today. So this would be an opportunity, and there's certainly, I think, a form that came with you. There's your action plan. And so if we think about the action plan in the activity, think about some of the principles we've discussed and how you could potentially apply those to a current work situation. And then in addition to that, what is that one specific action that you can take to put these into action? And so why you got these forms is you'll remember earlier, we talked about more likely for that commitment if you write it down. And so that's why you kind of have the homework assignment. It's not just that we, felt like we needed to give you something extra. Instead, it is to increase the likelihood that you will follow through and that you'll do the activity. And so there is that 30-day action plan. And so again, think about as we're going through and closing up here, how you could apply these things to a current work situation. And then what is that one specific action that you can take to implement that strategy? Go ahead, Napi. All right, so I alluded to this several times throughout, but we want to talk about the difference between positional influence or positional authority, I guess, and influence leadership. So positional leadership is really, it's only because of your title. People are following because they are required to due to authority or hierarchy. Whereas the influence leadership really comes from your vision, character, building those relationships, and people are following more so that because they want to. They've got that genuine, authentic connection. They feel some sort of ownership or buy-in to what you're trying to do, and to really, not doing it because you said so. Now, important here is that, again, just because you are in a position of authority does not guarantee that you're going to have influence or be able to impact meaningful change. Again, you still need to build and develop these skills and muscles so that you can use not only that position, but also the influence and relationships that you've built with people, because that's going to make it more likely for you to be successful. And something I encourage folks whenever I have opportunity is, we've all had good and bad bosses, good and bad leaders, what have you. But there's always something good and bad you can take from somebody. And so I encourage you to kind of think about those things as you're kind of thinking about progressing through the organization. And, think about a given situation. What were some of the positives and negatives from folks that you've worked with before, and how you would potentially handle that situation if you were in that position yourself. All right, Nafi. Okay, so if we're looking to influence people, we want to make sure that we're doing it kind of in an ethical way, right? We don't want to be manipulative. So, you certainly can be towing the line of influence. And then if you take a hard left or right, you might be, bordering on that manipulation territory. So that's something that you certainly want to be aware of and cognizant of, so that you are doing things, for the right reasons, if for lack of a better phrase. But if we're thinking about ethical persuasion, it means being honest about your intentions, so people know what you want and why. Being transparent with your communication, again, seeking those win-win outcomes that can't always just be, again, I'm going to take and never give. We've got to have kind of a two-way street here. You want to respect people with their ability to say yes or no. And again, focus on that genuine relationship building rather than any, kind of immediate gains. On the flip side, with manipulation, you would be potentially hiding your true agenda and aiming for just kind of that one-side benefit, using pressure or fear to influence folks. You may potentially treat people as kind of a means to an end, not really caring about maybe how they feel and what impact you might have on them. So kind of a way to think about this is, if you were doing something and you're kind of towing that line again, how would you feel if somebody were to use that approach with you specifically? All right. So Nafi, I think we're probably going to move ahead and let folks do the exercise on their own. And then again, the persuade framework is really kind of outlining some of the things that we've talked about. So again, if we're thinking about the purpose, everything's an acronym, particularly with my friends in HCS. But we've got purpose, evidence, relevance, social proof, unique value, ask, deadline, and ethics. And so, again, can kind of help you structure some of what you're trying to do if you're putting some of these principles into practice. Okay, we've got the action plan. We talked about this. We're going to take concrete steps to move forward and implement some of these things. Hopefully, again, throughout the discussion today, you've been thinking about a specific situation that you're dealing with at work that you can leverage these kind of ideas or skills, if you will, and kind of put these principles into practice. So nothing that you've got to turn in unless Nafi wants, 260 emails, but you could always send it in if you wanted to, and kind of see what's going on there. All right, man. I see you on camera.
Sorry, yes.
Over?
Yes, we're getting right to the end. And again, a lot of these questions that you'll see on the screen are going to be in the handout. So again, feel free to utilize the handout. And I'll make sure I drop the actual 30-day plan challenge. Again, I don't want them. It's for you to do and to abide by, again, because we want to give you content, but also hold you accountable as well. So definitely take heed into that. I definitely want to say thank you. Let's give Mr. Brown a round of applause. A wonderful presentation. Again, I did drop his survey link in the chat, and I'll redrop that again at the end in an email with all the handout information. Just to let you all know, the upcoming SEEDS event for May is going to be the Courageous Conversations, so navigating the tough talks with confidence. And that'll be presented by Ms. Andrea Lipinski, who is the Assistant Director for the San Diego Regional Office. So that'll be on May 5th, Cinco de Mayo Day. So come here first, and then after that, you guys can do whatever you want after 1 p.m. Eastern Central Time. So again, thank you all for joining us today. Thank you again, Mr. Brown, for this excellent presentation. And again, if you all could fill out that survey, that'll be great. Thank you all. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.